Hi guys, my name is Björn and welcome to Gilmourish. David Gilmour's new album, Luck and Strange, has been out for about a week now, and I'm going to do my best to do an honest review following up on the reviews that I did for the 3 singles. I'm going to talk about the album as a whole, the production, and obviously David Gilmour's playing and his tones. And I'm going to touch on a couple of things that might be controversial. So stick around. So I guess the question that we've all been asking ourselves for the past week is Luck and Strange as good as Dark Side of the Moon, as David Gilmour has been claiming in recent interviews? I'm going to answer that question later on, so let's jump into talking about the album. I'm going to start off by commenting on the cover artwork by Anton Corbijn, and I must say right from the start, this is probably the ugliest album cover I've seen related to Pink Floyd and any of its members. I don't like it at all. I love Anton's work with Depeche Mode and stuff, but this cover doesn't do anything for me. I bought the vinyl and flipped it over, and there's a beautiful portrait of David Gilmour. So if you ask me, they should have used that one on the cover. With that out of the way, let's talk about the album. I first listened to the album on Spotify, and my initial response was that it was okay. Then I listened to the vinyl, and it's been on high rotation for the last week, and I must say this is an album that keeps on growing. There's no doubt, at least for me and as a musician myself, that this album was put together with the vinyl format in mind. So if you haven't, be sure to check out the vinyl, do yourself a favor and put on some good headphones. And I love these small pieces, Black Cat and Vita Brevis, that's very short. But these songs also has a purpose, allowing the bigger pieces to take place and room. Much like one of my favorite bands, Black Sabbath, did in the 70s, having these small pieces and the larger pieces really stood out. Also, obviously the last track, Scattered, is the perfect ending to this album. One thing about the track list, I would have chosen the Piper's Call as the lead off track, or the second track after Black Cat. I don't think the title track is a good enough track to start the album. My favorite tracks are probably the Piper's Call. Check out my review on that one. Scattered, the last song, I'm going to talk about that shortly, and also A Single Spark. And now I've seen a couple of comments on A Single Spark, people saying that it's too off what you would expect from Pink Floyd or David Gilmour. But to me, as a musician and someone who's been releasing albums, writing music, this is a track that I can certainly relate to musically. It's a song that I probably could have written myself. Not my intention to brag or anything, but it's the same style that I often find myself writing. Going back to late 60s, early 70s British singer-songwriters, Scott Walker, and also more contemporary guys like Richard Hawley, which has this typically 60s vibe to it, and I think it's a tremendous song, and also a song that shows a new side of David. Now, obviously, the strongest track on the album is probably Scattered, which starts off beautifully, and it has this very un-Floyd middle section, if you will, that sort of reminds me of the Beatles and A Day in the Life, with these strange string arrangements. and obviously the last bit with the 3 different guitar solos building up is sort of reminiscent of Near the End from David's About Face album, and it's so rewarding after having listened to the album and hearing that Big Muff at the end. My least favorite track is probably Dark and Velvet Nights. It's a track that for me stands out as a filler, and one that reminds me a lot of some of the tracks on David's last album, Rattle That Luck, the title track, and also Today. And if you've been following my reviews, you've probably noticed that I've been very vocal about not liking the Rattle That Luck album at all. A surprise is between 2 points. Now, this is a cover song, and I did a review of it. I did say that it was a strange choice for a single, having his daughter singing the song, and there's not much guitar there at all, apart from the guitar solo at the end. But listening to it in the context of the other songs, I must say that it's really a high point on the album, and an incredibly emotional song as well. And I can certainly relate to David having his daughter singing it. He must be incredibly proud, and being a father to a daughter myself, I can really sense the emotions in that song, in that performance. So again, how the different songs flows together, and going on with the production, to me this is a very emotional album. It's not David's best album. For me, it doesn't even come close to his 78 solo album, and probably not On an Island either. But there's a lot of emotions on this album that hits me very hard, I think, and I can relate to having his family members on board, and the lyrics about mortality. It might be where I'm at in my life, in my own life at the moment, but again, this is an album that keeps on growing, and for me it's probably one of his most emotional albums. Now going on to over to the production. As I said, with the singles, the production is very different. It's very unfloyd, if you will, and but at the same time it's a style of production that I can relate to, and one that's not too far from what I find myself using on my own albums, or at least try to achieve. It's very organic. It's very experimental, and his guitar tones on this album is probably one of his best in a long time, at least for me. They're very unprocessed, very honest, and to me it feels like I'm standing next to the amp, which is a big achievement. Again, I really love the production on this album, and I really love his guitar tones. Speaking of guitar tones, if you haven't already, be sure to head on over to Gilmour.com and check out the brand new gear guide that I did for this album. Check it out, and please use the comments field below or in the feature on Gilmour.com, and let me know if I missed something, if I have anything wrong, or if you have some information that I don't have. I said in the beginning that I would touch on some things that might be controversial, and the first thing is that as much as I love David's tones on this album, I do miss those solos that has a bit of hooks and melodies. I wasn't expecting anything near Comfortably Numb, Sorrow, or On the Turning Away, or those huge stadium-like guitar solos. He's not there anymore. Which is fine. But I talked about this with a friend of mine who's also a guitarist, and there's too much noodling on this album. and I'm sure he's in a good place when he plays this stuff. But I miss the melody. There's too much repeating licks, and I find myself getting bored actually listening to some of his playing. So I'm eager to hear what you think. Do you think this is some of David's best playing? Do you think it's okay, or are you disappointed? Now the second thing that I want to talk about is the lyrics. And this is a huge drawback for me. Now I'm sure that Polly, is David's wife, is a fine writer. She's a novelist and she's written many books. I haven't read them, but to me it sounds too much like David is just reading off a book, and the lyrics aren't that musical, and there's too many words that are popping out, too many difficult words, too many words that aren't musical at all. So I find myself getting a bit irritated and pissed off listening to this album as well, as much as I like it. And again, Polly is a fine writer, and I'm sure that David is proud of their collaboration, and it must be incredibly rewarding working with your wife and your family. But I wish that he, and again, this is something that I also discussed with some of my music friends, that I wish that David had more confidence in himself. He has written some amazing lyrics with Pink Floyd and also on his solo albums. And the theme is sort of the same, going back to Fat Old Son, High Hopes. It's the mortality, looking back on his childhood, which is sort of the theme on this album as well. But I wish that he would have more confidence in himself as a songwriter, as a musician, as a guitarist, and do more himself. And trying to answer the big question, is it as good as Dark Side of the Moon? Well, obviously not. I mean, Dark Side of the Moon is one of the biggest albums of all time, and regardless of its sales. But it doesn't matter. This is a final album, and it's an album reflecting on where David is now in his life. And again, I'm happy that David has done a new album. I'm happy to see that he is happy, that he is proud, and I can't wait for the next album. So I want to hear what your thoughts are. What's your favorite track? What didn't you like? And what are your thoughts on his tones, his playing? And also, are you going to see David on the upcoming tour? Use the comments field below and let me know. And I'll see you soon.